Reflecting on your time in the CEO role, what are the two key learnings and insights you have gained about maintaining healthy and productive relationship with your board and chairperson?
There's 3 points here. 1, relationships. 2, relationships. 3, relationships. It's all about relationships. A successful relationship between the CEO and the board and the chairman particularly is critical, absolutely vital for the successful execution of a great strategy and a good vision. If you don't have relationships, it won't work, and you need to, as the CEO, be the initiator of that as well as the responder to that, and it needs to happen informally and formally. And communication, over-communicate with your board, because then it'll be a positive environment, and always look for opportunities to provide stories about what's happening within the organisation. Often relationships between the board and the CEO fall into the realm of executing operational matters, and you lose the heart and soul of the organisation. So human interest stories, the narrative of the organisation, that makes a difference, particularly for directors of a board.
I think that comes down to communication. I think you've got to have very clear communication pathways between yourself and your chair or your president. And then also being really transparent in what you're reporting back up to the board. I think then the board has confidence in what you're reporting, but also you then gain confidence in the ability of the board to have really good conversations at board level.
I think the relationship between the board and CEO and board and chair are critical. In fact, if that relationship is poor, nothing else really works. What I've learned is that there's no hard and fast rules for a good relationship. But what you have to do is establish the hard and fast rules for a good relationship. They'll be different in different circumstances, they'll be different in different organisations. So one of the things that I do is at the beginning of my relationship, I actually sit down now and say, where does the board sit in strategy versus where does the executive sit in strategy? And I've actually got a little bar chart that I get everyone to mark where they think they sit on. Now, there's no right answer. What's important is that we all eventually agree on one point on this scale, and it doesn't matter which point, and it might move. And in fact, every time a new board member comes on, we have the same discussion again, and sometimes we move. So it's getting those clear relationships and clear understanding of expectations, and then being relaxed about that. I think that the days of the imperial CEO are long gone. The days of the servant-master relationship between the board and the CEO are long gone. What I want to do is for the board and CEO to together see that they are the first team of the organisation. I want them not to think about governance, but think about leadership. We are the leaders. I want to get rid of this us and them. We are the leaders, and how we work together as a leadership team is going to make the rest of the organisation hum. And having that absolute overt conversation to get that commitment to leadership and that understanding to work together is magic. I didn't do that when I first began as a CEO, but it's now an utter discipline that pays huge dividends.
I really enjoy board meetings and look forward to them because you get an opportunity to work with people, like-minded people. I think it's really important to get to know them, understand what their strengths are and make sure that they can add value to the organisation. And I think for me that's a really important thing. I want them to be able to contribute, and they want to contribute, so it's my job, I think, to make sure that I can facilitate that. Getting to know them personally and understanding that they make a massive contribution, and we need to be conscious that they can't just drop everything. Most of them are high-level executives, they have families, they have many other commitments. So for me it's around getting to know them, building a relationship of trust. And trust, this is more than two, isn't it? But building trust by respecting them, never blindsiding them, making sure they know what's happening and that they have enough information. So I think it's a really important relationship that you need to continually work at.
I think the CEO and the chairperson have to have a no surprises relationship. In all the organisations I've led, I've met with the chairperson on a weekly basis as a minimum. We've just talked generally about what's going on. We're like a small executive team. That's really critical. Often then there's the accusation the chair and CEO are too close. I don't think that should be the case if the chair is then relaying things onto the board.
But again, I think it's about the type of discussion that you're able to have at board. I don't think board should just be the CEO talking. In fact, I don't like talking to the board. I think you have to set time aside, and we have area on our agenda for strategic discussions. So if I thought that something was going off the rails, at the next board meeting I'd put that under the strategic discussion, but I'd also probably have an aside conversation with my chair. I think it's really important that the CEO and the chair meet and talk about issues, and it's almost, for me as a CEO, I almost lobby my chair around issues and say, you know, I'm going to put this issue up to the board. Do you want to think about it? Do you want to help me mould this paper? Do you want to think about the key messages? Will you support me if I put this up? Because it's going to be a difficult conversation. And I don't go to the board with anything that's really difficult unless I know that I've got the support of one or two of them. And we don't work alone. We should be working as a team. That's what the board's there for. I've got a board of 9 people, and they all come from such different backgrounds, and therefore they've got such different experiences and expertise that I can have a conversation with that board member knowing that it will interest the other board members, but they will then reflect back to that person and say, does that make sense to you? And so, you know, I think it's just about, you have to develop those relationships with your board members.
I think the critical element is to have both formal and informal meetings with your chairman. Look for opportunities to do that. I think you need to drive the agenda with some of those meetings. I recall one chairman that I had, he had 3 items on his agenda, and then we used to meet the morning after the board meeting, and his items were the finance, the operations of the organisation, the way the directors behaved or didn't behave in the board meeting, and the strategy, and then the rest of the agenda was mine. So that was a formal opportunity. But you need to look for informal ways in which you can build your relationship with your CEO. And there's a sense in which you need to be open and honest with him or her in a way that builds that rapport between you both. So he or she as chairman never feels like there are surprises. There should be no surprises between the CEO and the chairman.
I know there's a lot of debate too about, board time without the CEO, etc. The effectiveness of that, I think, actually depends upon the quality time that the CEO and chairperson actually spend together, problem solving, and they should be really talking about things like how the board meeting is working as much as how the organisation is working. They should be talking about the performance of board members as much as the performance of the executive. Really, they together are the creative team that's going to be the leadership team within what I consider as the organisational leadership team, which is the board and CEO together.